Welcome to Sleepy Tale Stories, where dreams begin and worries fade. I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching now? Now, let's begin this journey to deep and peaceful sleep. In the soft, glowing light of the early morning, a light mist hung in the cool mountain air. The Chimanimani Mountains, with their towering peaks and deep valleys, were still cloaked in a quiet stillness. There was no rush, no hurry. The world felt peaceful, as if it had just awoken from a deep slumber itself. It was in these moments, when everything was still and quiet, that the magic of the mountains could truly be felt. You could hear the faint rustle of leaves in the distance, the gentle caress of the wind through the trees. Birds were just beginning to stir, their songs soft and melodic, floating through the air like whispers. Their melody was slow and soothing, as if they were trying to lull the world back into peaceful slumber. On the forest path that twisted and turned through the trees, a gentle hiker began their journey. The path was narrow, carved into the side of the mountain by years of nature's patient hands. The ground was soft underfoot, covered in layers of moss and fallen leaves, all of them gently cushioned by time. Each step felt like a soft embrace, a connection with the earth beneath. The hiker paused just for a moment. They looked around, breathing in the crisp, fresh air. It had a smell, a deep, earthy scent mixed with pine and damp soil that felt as if it had been there forever. The coolness of the mountain breeze brushed against their skin, carrying with it the promise of something far beyond the horizon. Something peaceful, something timeless. And so, with every breath, they felt their body relax. There was no urgency in their steps. The world around them moved in its own rhythm, and the hiker allowed themselves to fall into that gentle pace. With each step forward, the mountains seemed to draw them deeper into a sense of calm. The trees, tall and ancient, stood like silent guardians, their branches reaching high into the sky, as though they were whispering secrets only the wind could understand. As they walked, they came upon a small clearing where the sunlight filtered through the trees in delicate beams, casting a soft, golden glow on everything it touched. The clearing was surrounded by a ring of tall grasses that swayed ever so gently in the breeze, bending like dancers in the wind's rhythm. The hiker sat down on a smooth rock, nestled between two large trees. The earth below them felt solid, comforting, like a pillow for their tired body. The air was so fresh here, so pure. They closed their eyes, just for a moment, letting the soft sounds of the forest fill their mind. There was no need to rush. The mountains had always been slow, and so, too, was the hiker's heart, as they let themselves be swallowed up by the peaceful serenity of the land. The sounds of the forest were soft and rhythmic. The wind moving through the trees sounded like a soft whisper, and the distant calls of birds echoed in the distance, barely more than a murmur in the vast expanse of nature. Even the crunch of their footsteps on the moss seemed to blend into the natural symphony of the world. For a while, the hiker simply sat, breathing deeply, allowing the calm to fill them up completely. There was no need to speak, no need for anything except the present moment. The mountains had a way of making you forget the rush of life, of reminding you that sometimes the best thing you can do is simply breathe and let go. The sun, which had been rising gently above the peaks, was now beginning to climb higher, casting warm rays of light that dappled the ground in patterns of gold. The air felt lighter, and the scent of pine and earth was even more pronounced, like the very essence of the forest itself. As the hiker slowly stood and stretched, they felt a deep connection with the earth beneath them, as though they were a part of something much larger, much older than they could ever truly understand. The journey continued, each step slow, deliberate, and filled with a sense of purpose that had no end. The path ahead was not unknown, but it felt like a place to be discovered anew. Every rock, every tree, every rustle of leaves seemed like an invitation to pause, to listen, to be present in the moment. There was no rush, no destination that could pull them away from this very moment, from the deep sense of calm that settled over them with every breath they took. As the path wound its way upward, the hiker felt the air grow cooler, the scent of pine more intense. The trees grew taller here, their trunks thick and strong, their leaves whispering in the wind, as if telling stories to each other, stories that had been passed down through generations. The hiker felt their heart beat in rhythm with the wind, slow and steady, as they continued on their way. Each step brought them further into the heart of the Chimanimani Mountains, where the only sounds were the soft rustling of the trees and the distant calls of birds. There were no distractions, no hurry, just the quiet rhythm of the journey. It was a journey that was not about reaching the end, but about being present every step of the way, allowing the forest to embrace you, to carry you through its ancient rhythms. And so, the hiker continued, each step soft and measured, with no goal except the peace of the moment. As the mountains stood silent and tall around them, they knew that they were not alone. The forest was alive with stories, with memories, with the quiet heartbeat of the earth itself. With every breath, they felt the weight of the world fall away, and all that remained was the gentle rhythm of the journey. The Chimanimani Mountains, in all their stillness, held a peace that was both eternal and fleeting, a reminder of the beauty of simplicity, the power of stillness, and the calm that could be found in every breath. The hiker walked deeper into the heart of the Chimanimani Mountains. The path was now a soft incline, and the air, though still crisp, felt warmer as the sun continued its climb across the sky. The distant peaks, still shrouded in mist, seemed to watch over the traveler like silent guardians. The trees around them were becoming taller, their trunks gnarled and twisted, their branches reaching high above in an intricate weave of life. As the hiker's feet padded softly against the forest floor, the world around them seemed to slow. It was as though the mountains were gently pulling them into a dream, one where time had no place. The only things that existed in this moment were the wind, the trees, and the steady rhythm of their own heart. Every step felt like an offering to the earth itself. The path ahead, though winding and occasionally steep, felt like a soft invitation. Each step was measured, slow, purposeful, and unhurried, as if the journey itself was more important than any destination that might lie ahead. In the distance, the faint sound of a stream reached their ears. The sound was soft at first, like a whisper, and then it grew louder as the hiker drew closer. It was the kind of sound that seemed to resonate in the very core of your being, gentle and calming, like a lullaby that the forest itself sang to welcome the traveler. The air around the stream was cool, the scent of fresh water mingling with the earthy aroma of the pine trees. The hiker reached the stream and stopped for a moment, allowing themselves to absorb the serenity of the place. The water, clear and pure, trickled over smooth stones, making its way through the valley in a lazy, peaceful way. It sparkled in the sunlight, sending tiny reflections dancing across the surface of the water, like little stars in the quiet of the mountain forest. The hiker knelt beside the stream, dipping their fingers into the cool water. The touch was refreshing, grounding, as if the very stream was offering them a moment of calm, a small piece of the peace that the mountains had to offer. They closed their eyes, listening to the soft babble of the water as it flowed endlessly onward, unhurried, content in its own journey. For a long while, the hiker sat beside the stream, allowing the peaceful sound of the water to wash over them. The air here was cooler, with a soft mist rising from the water and mingling with the scent of pine. The moment felt timeless, as if it existed outside of the usual flow of time, a moment suspended in calm serenity. It was in moments like this that the hiker could feel the deep connection between themselves and the mountains. The Chimanimani Mountains were not just a place to pass through. They were a living, breathing entity, full of stories, full of life, full of peace. And it was in these quiet moments, these pauses in the journey, that the true magic of the mountains could be felt. The hiker took a deep breath, feeling the air fill their lungs. It was pure, untainted. And as they exhaled, they felt a gentle sense of release, as if the mountains themselves were helping them to let go of anything that weighed heavy on their heart. There was no need to think of anything beyond this moment, nothing to worry about, nothing to hurry toward. The world around them was enough. Slowly, the hiker stood and continued along the path. The stream faded into the distance, its soft babble now only a whisper on the wind, but its calm remained in the air. As they walked, the forest seemed to grow quieter, the world retreating into a stillness that felt like a warm embrace. The trees, with their ancient bark and rustling leaves, stood as silent witnesses to the passage of time, their branches reaching toward the sky, their roots stretching deep into the earth. Every step on the mountain was like a conversation with nature itself. The hiker could feel the energy of the earth beneath them, the gentle pull of gravity, the soft hum of the living world. It was a reminder that everything, even the quietest of moments, was alive in its own way. As the path continued to rise, the trees grew denser, their canopies forming a roof of green above, letting only slivers of sunlight filter through. The air here was thick with the scent of damp earth, and the sound of the wind moving through the leaves above created a soft, whispering lullaby. It was as if the forest was speaking in a language only the mountains knew, a language of peace and slowness, of timelessness. The hiker felt their body relax further with every step, each breath deeper and more peaceful than the last. The mountain was slowly wrapping them in its embrace, and there was no desire to rush, no need to move faster. Here, in the heart of the Chimanimani Mountains, there was only this moment, this rhythm, this quiet, gentle pace. They walked on, letting the peace of the mountains sink into their bones, feeling the slow, steady heartbeat of the earth beneath them. Every step felt softer, gentler, as if the mountains themselves were guiding them along the path, encouraging them to slow down, to savor the journey, and to leave behind all thoughts of the outside world. It was as if the mountains were saying, "Let go, dear traveler. Leave behind your worries and your hurry. Here, you are safe. Here, you are home." And so, with each breath, the hiker let go. They allowed the mountains to guide them deeper into the quiet embrace of the forest, where time had no place, and peace was found in the simplicity of each step. The deeper the hiker ventured into the forest, the more the world around them seemed to fade away. The trees grew thicker, their trunks wider, their branches forming an almost impenetrable canopy overhead. The sunlight that had been filtering through the leaves grew dimmer, the shadows of the trees growing long and cool. But even as the path darkened, the air remained warm, carrying with it the fragrance of pine and earth. With each step, the hiker felt a sense of being drawn further into the heart of the mountains, as though the very land itself was calling them, inviting them to discover something hidden, something ancient. The path beneath their feet was soft and forgiving, the moss and fallen leaves muffling their footsteps as they continued onward. The only sounds were the distant calls of birds, the occasional rustle of leaves, and the steady rhythm of their own breath. There was no hurry. There was no rush. Time seemed to stretch out in front of them, moving at a different pace, slower, more deliberate. The mountains had their own sense of time, and the hiker was learning to move in harmony with it. Every step felt like an act of meditation, an invitation to be present, to be fully immersed in the beauty of the world around them. The hiker paused for a moment, standing in the middle of the path, allowing the sounds of the forest to fill their senses. The soft rustle of leaves in the breeze, the distant murmur of the stream, the hum of insects in the air. Each sound felt like a note in a song, a symphony of nature that played just for them. The world seemed to hold its breath, as though it, too, was listening, waiting for the next moment to unfold. The mountains seemed to breathe with them, the air cool and fresh as it swept through the forest. The trees swayed gently, their leaves shimmering in the soft light. It was as if the entire world had become part of a slow, rhythmic dance, each movement deliberate and graceful. And the hiker, moving at their own steady pace, was part of that dance, moving in tune with the ancient rhythms of the land. After a few moments of stillness, the hiker continued, feeling their body relax even more with every step. They were no longer aware of the passage of time, only of the journey itself, of the quiet, soothing flow of the world around them. The path had narrowed, winding through a dense thicket of trees. The air here was cooler, the forest darker, but the hiker felt no fear. There was nothing to fear here, only a deep sense of peace that seemed to radiate from the earth itself. As the path curved around a bend, the hiker saw a small clearing ahead. The trees parted just enough to allow a glimpse of the sky beyond, the pale blue sky framed by the dark silhouettes of the towering peaks. In the center of the clearing, a small, clear pool of water lay nestled between the rocks, its surface smooth as glass, reflecting the sky above. The hiker felt an overwhelming sense of calm as they approached the pool, the gentle sound of water trickling nearby adding to the serene atmosphere. They knelt beside the pool, gazing into its depths. The water was so clear, so pure, that it seemed as though they could see all the way to the bottom, where smooth stones rested, their surfaces worn smooth by the passage of time. The stillness of the pool mirrored the stillness of the mountains, both holding secrets, both holding memories of a time long past. The hiker reached out, letting their fingers graze the surface of the water. The coolness of the water sent a gentle shiver through their hand, but it was a refreshing kind of chill, a reminder of the purity of nature. The water was alive, moving ever so gently, as if it too was part of the slow rhythm of the mountains. Each ripple that formed on the surface seemed to echo the heartbeat of the earth itself, and the hiker allowed themselves to sink into that rhythm, to become part of it. They closed their eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath, letting the stillness of the place wash over them. The sound of the water, the rustle of the trees, the soft whisper of the wind, it all blended together, forming a melody that filled their mind with peace. The mountains had a way of making everything feel simple, effortless, as though the very act of being present in this place was enough. For a time, the hiker remained beside the pool, content in the quiet beauty of the moment. There was no need for anything more, no need to move, no need to speak, just the gentle rhythm of the world unfolding around them. As the minutes stretched on, the hiker felt a deep sense of gratitude, not for anything in particular, but for everything. The trees, the water, the air, the very land beneath their feet. The mountains had a way of making you feel small and yet deeply connected to everything around you, as though you were part of something much larger than yourself. In this moment, it didn't matter who they were or where they had come from. Here, in the quiet of the Chimanimani Mountains, they were simply a traveler, moving slowly through a world that had existed long before them and would continue long after. Slowly, the hiker stood, taking one last look at the pool. The gentle ripples had faded, leaving the surface calm and still once more, reflecting the blue sky above. They felt lighter somehow, as if the mountains had shared a little of their quiet wisdom with them. And now it was time to continue on. The path ahead beckoned, winding through the forest, but the hiker knew that no matter where it led, they would carry the peace of this moment with them. With a deep, contented breath, they turned away from the pool and began to walk once more. The trees parted in front of them, opening up to reveal the next part of the journey, and the mountains seemed to embrace them once again, wrapping them in their timeless, quiet energy. And so, with each step, the hiker moved deeper into the heart of the Chimanimani Mountains, where the rhythm of the earth pulsed quietly beneath their feet, and the peace of the land enveloped them like a gentle, unspoken promise. As the hiker continued deeper into the Chimanimani Mountains, the landscape began to shift. The path, once soft and winding through the dense forest, began to rise more sharply. The trees grew fewer, replaced by rocky outcroppings and open spaces where the wind could freely sweep across the land. The air grew thinner, cooler, and with each step, the hiker felt a sense of elevation, not just in the land, but in their own spirit. There was something about the high peaks that spoke of a different kind of peace, a stillness that was almost sacred. It was as though the higher they climbed, the quieter the world became. The rustling of leaves, the soft murmur of the stream, all faded into silence, leaving only the whisper of the wind and the soft crunch of gravel beneath their feet. The path was now rocky, the stones beneath their feet uneven, yet each step felt steady. The hiker had become attuned to the rhythm of the mountain, each movement a part of the flow, each footfall a connection to the ancient rock beneath them. The steady climb was not difficult not painful, but instead felt like a natural progression, as though the mountain itself was guiding them upward, inviting them to witness the view from its highest point. As they ascended, the landscape around them began to open up. The dense forest that had once surrounded them was now a distant memory, replaced by wide stretches of rocky terrain, dotted with patches of hardy grass and small wild flowers. The scent of pine was replaced by the crisp, fresh smell of the high mountain air, clean and pure. And as the hiker looked up, the towering peaks of the Chimanimani Mountains stretched before them, their jagged edges rising sharply against the clear blue sky. For a moment, the hiker paused again, standing at the edge of a rocky outcrop that jutted out over a deep valley below. The view was breathtaking. The valley stretched out like a sea of green, the trees below looking like tiny specks from this height. Far in the distance, the other peaks of the Chimanimani range rose and fell like waves, their sharp ridgelines softened by the haze of the atmosphere. The world seemed to stretch out endlessly, a vast, timeless expanse that seemed to go on forever. The hiker closed their eyes for a moment, letting the wind sweep across their face. The air up here felt different, lighter, and it carried with it a sense of freedom, a feeling of boundless possibility. It was as if the high peaks were calling the hiker to look beyond, to see not just the land before them, but to look inward, to listen to the quiet whispers of the soul. The wind howled in the distance, swirling around the rocky outcrops like a playful spirit, tugging at the edges of the hiker's jacket. But it was a friendly wind, a wind that spoke of adventure and discovery, a wind that invited the traveler to embrace the wildness of the mountains, to feel the power of nature in its rawest form. The hiker stood still, allowing the wind to embrace them, feeling the coolness of the air against their skin. The mountains were alive, and the hiker was part of that life, part of the land, part of the ancient rhythm of the earth. The climb continued, and with each step, the air grew cooler still. The trees were replaced by low shrubs, their branches twisting in the wind, and the ground became harder, more barren. The higher they climbed, the more it seemed as though the world was narrowing, the mountains growing taller, the sky expanding above them like a vast ocean of blue. There was a quiet majesty in these high places, a sense of awe that filled the hiker's heart. As they looked around, they could see the distant ridgelines cutting sharply into the sky, the rugged terrain stretching away into the horizon. There were no roads here, no signs of human life, just the raw, untamed beauty of nature. It was as if the world up here had been untouched, preserved in a state of quiet perfection. As the hiker continued their journey, they reached a plateau, a flat area of rock and grass that seemed to open up in front of them. This was the highest point they had reached so far, and from here, the view was nothing short of spectacular. The entire Chimanimani range stretched out before them, the peaks rising like jagged teeth against the sky. The valleys below were a patchwork of green, dotted with rivers that shimmered in the sunlight like threads of silver. The hiker stood there, taking in the view, feeling as if they were on the edge of the world. The air was thin, and with each breath, they felt lighter, freer, as if they were drawing in the very essence of the mountains themselves. Here, at this high point, there was a sense of clarity, a deep knowing that everything was as it should be, that there was no need for hurry, no need for worry. The mountains had always been here, and they would continue to stand long after the hiker had left. The hiker closed their eyes again, letting the quiet of the high peaks fill them completely. There was no sound here, no movement, just the soft hum of the world itself, the steady pulse of the earth beneath their feet. It was a place of stillness, a place where time seemed to stand still. The high mountains held the secrets of the world, and in this moment, the hiker felt as though they were sharing in those secrets, as though they had been invited to listen to the ancient wisdom of the land. For a long while, the hiker simply stood there, allowing the peace of the mountains to wash over them. The wind continued to swirl around them, but it no longer felt cold. Instead, it was a warm embrace, a gentle reminder that they were not alone, that they were a part of something much larger, much older than themselves. And as the hiker stood on that high plateau, looking out over the endless expanse of mountains, they knew that the journey had only just begun. The Chimanimani Mountains were full of mysteries, full of stories waiting to be discovered. And with each step, the hiker would uncover a little more of that story, moving ever forward in harmony with the land, in harmony with the peace of the mountains. As the hiker continued their ascent, the landscape shifted once more, becoming even more dramatic and wild. The steady climb had brought them into the heart of the high mountains, where the terrain was jagged and unforgiving. The air, already thin, seemed to grow lighter with every step, and the rocks beneath their feet became larger, more uneven. But despite the challenge, the hiker felt no fatigue, no weariness. Instead, there was a quiet strength in each movement, as though the very essence of the mountains was infusing them with energy, filling them with a calm determination. Each step felt like a rhythm, a pulse that matched the heartbeat of the earth itself. The wind that blew through the high peaks was stronger now, tugging at the hiker's jacket, sending their hair flying in all directions. But even in the face of the wind's force, there was a sense of serenity. The mountains were alive with the movement of air and stone, the dance of the elements playing out in perfect harmony. The world below seemed to fade away, becoming a distant memory. The trees had long since vanished, replaced by the stark beauty of rock and grass. The landscape here felt ancient, untouched by time, as though the mountains had stood like this for eons, watching the world change while remaining forever the same. It was a place that spoke of eternity, of a quiet, enduring strength that could never be broken. The hiker paused once again, standing on a rocky outcrop that overlooked the vast expanse below. The valley stretched out like a sea of green, dotted with rivers that sparkled in the sunlight. The peaks, now closer than ever, rose sharply into the sky, their jagged ridgelines etched against the blue. The air here was pure, untouched by the noise of the world. It was as though the mountains held their own kind of silence, a deep, reverent quiet that filled the soul. The hiker took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill their lungs. With every breath, they felt a deeper connection to the land, to the mountains, to the very earth beneath their feet. Here, there was nothing but the mountains, and the hiker was no longer just a traveler. They were part of the mountain's story, a small but integral piece of the vast, timeless landscape. As they continued on, the path grew even steeper, the rocks sharper. But the hiker moved with a quiet grace, as though the mountain itself was guiding their steps. The rhythm of their movement matched the rhythm of the wind, the rhythm of the earth. And with each step, the hiker felt a deeper sense of peace. The world up here was different, untouched by human hands, unbroken by the noise of modern life. It was as if the mountains existed in a different time, a place where the only measure of success was simply being present. There was no rush, no need for anything other than the moment. The hiker had left behind all thoughts of the outside world, all worries and cares. Here, there was only the land, only the rhythm of the journey. The wind whispered in their ears, soft and insistent. as it swept through the high peaks, moving the grasses at their feet like a gentle wave. The hiker felt the breeze on their skin, the coolness of it, the way it seemed to cleanse and refresh with every passing moment. The air was so pure up here, it felt as though they were breathing in the very essence of the mountains themselves, as though the air was alive with the spirit of the land. It was a simple thing, this act of breathing, but up here, at the highest reaches of the Chimanimani Mountains, it felt profound. Each breath was a gift, a reminder that life itself was a journey, a series of moments strung together in a quiet rhythm. And the hiker knew, without a doubt, that the mountains had taught them something important. The journey wasn't about reaching the top, about finding some distant destination. The journey was about being present, about feeling the world around them, about moving with the rhythm of the earth. The path now led them to a narrow ridge that stretched across the mountain like a spine, rising and falling with the curves of the land. The sky above was a brilliant blue, the sun shining brightly, but the air was cool, crisp, a refreshing balm to the warmth of the sun. The wind had picked up here, swirling around them like a playful spirit, tugging at their jacket, rustling the grass at their feet. The hiker stood for a moment, taking in the view. The valley below was vast, stretching out in every direction. The rivers winding their way through the landscape like veins of silver. The peaks, still distant but ever present, rose above the valley, their jagged edges etched into the sky. It was a view that seemed to go on forever, a view that could never be captured by any photograph, a view that could only be experienced in this moment, in this place. The hiker smiled softly, feeling the joy of simply being alive, simply being here. There was no need for words, no need for explanation. The mountains spoke for themselves, their silence more eloquent than any speech could be. The hiker had found their place in this vast, timeless world. And for this moment, that was enough. With a quiet sigh, the hiker continued onward, following the ridge as it curved gently around the mountain. The wind, still playful, continued to dance around them, pulling them forward, urging them onward. The rhythm of the journey continued, steady and unhurried. And with each step, the hiker felt more and more in tune with the land, more and more a part of the quiet, enduring rhythm of the mountains. And so, they moved on, with no destination in mind, no rush to reach the end. The journey itself was the destination. The journey itself was the reward. The mountains had shown them the way, and the hiker had learned to walk in harmony with the land, to feel the rhythm of the earth in every step, every breath. The high peaks of the Chimanimani Mountains seemed to stretch on forever, their silent majesty enveloping the hiker in a quiet peace that could only be found in places untouched by time, places where the earth still whispered its ancient secrets. The hiker's journey had taken them far into the heart of the Chimanimani Mountains, where the land had whispered its ancient secrets and the winds had carried stories across the peaks. The sky had shifted from bright blue to a soft golden hue as the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon. There was a quiet stillness in the air now, a calm that settled over the land as the day moved toward its end. The mountains, tall and majestic, stood watch over the world, silent and timeless, their ridgelines glowing in the fading light. The hiker paused once more, standing on the edge of a gentle slope that led down into a peaceful valley below. The valley, bathed in the soft light of the setting sun, was a patchwork of green, the trees swaying gently in the evening breeze. The air was cool and crisp, filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. The quiet of the mountains seemed to grow deeper as the day turned to dusk, and the hiker felt a deep sense of peace settle within them, a peace that came from knowing that the journey had always been about the slow rhythm of each step, the gentle flow of the earth, and the timeless connection between the traveler and the land. The mountain path, which had felt so rugged and wild earlier in the day, now seemed to soften, its edges rounded by the fading light. The stones, once sharp and jagged, now seemed gentle, their rough surfaces smoothed by the passage of time. The world was quiet now, the sounds of the wind and the birds replaced by the soft murmur of the evening. The journey had come full circle, and the hiker felt as though they had returned to where they had started, to the place of stillness and peace that had called them into the mountains in the first place. The hiker looked around one last time, taking in the view, feeling the quiet of the mountains fill them up completely. The land stretched out before them, vast and unchanging, a world of ancient beauty that had witnessed countless seasons pass. The mountains stood tall, unbroken, their peaks still reaching toward the sky, their valleys deep and quiet. And as the hiker stood there, they felt a deep connection to the land, a bond that could never be broken, a bond forged in the quiet rhythms of nature. With a deep, contented breath, the hiker turned away from the ridge, their steps slow and deliberate as they began the descent back down the path. The mountains, now bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun, seemed to welcome them back, their presence comforting, their silence profound. The hiker's heart was light, their spirit filled with the calm that only the mountains could offer. There was no rush to leave, no hurry to return. The journey had been enough. The journey itself had been the destination. As the hiker made their way down the path, they passed once again by the stream where they had rested earlier in the day. The water, still clear and pure, flowed gently over the rocks, its soft babble a lullaby to the tired traveler. The world seemed even quieter now, as though the land itself was ready to rest, to sleep beneath the stars that were beginning to appear in the sky. The hiker knelt beside the stream once more, dipping their fingers into the cool water. The touch was familiar now, grounding, soothing. They closed their eyes and listened to the sound of the water, letting it fill their senses. It was a sound that had followed them throughout the journey, a sound that had become part of the rhythm of the mountains. The water flowed endlessly onward, just as the journey had, moving with a quiet determination toward an unknown destination. And as the hiker stood once more and continued down the path, they felt a deep sense of contentment, knowing that they had been part of something timeless, something far greater than themselves. The Chimanimani Mountains had shared their secrets, and in return, the hiker had learned to listen to the rhythm of the earth, to the quiet language of the wind, to the stillness of the trees. The sun, now low in the sky, cast long shadows across the land as the hiker made their way toward the valley below. The light was soft, golden, a quiet reminder that even the brightest days must eventually give way to the night. But the night, like the day, would be peaceful, calm, and full of quiet wonder. The mountains would rest beneath the stars, their peaks bathed in moonlight, their valleys cradling the stillness of the world. And as the hiker descended into the valley, they could hear the soft rustle of leaves, the gentle whisper of the wind through the trees, and the distant call of a bird settling in for the night. The mountains had carried them through their journey, and now, as the day came to an end, they were ready to rest, to sleep beneath the stars, to dream of the land that had whispered its secrets into their heart. The journey had come to an end, but the peace of the mountains, the calm of the earth, would stay with them forever. And so, the hiker walked on, the rhythm of the earth beneath their feet, their heart full of the quiet beauty of the mountains, and the promise of dreams as peaceful and endless as the land itself.